Hello friends, in continuation with my alcohol abstinence art and literature series, as a comic book fan, I was checking out one of the most, if not the most famous run of Iron Man is from the 1980s, featuring the wonderful pencil work of John Romita Jr., as well as Bob Layton on the inks and David Michelinie writing the script. As publisher Stan Lee writes in the intro here to The Power of Ironman from 1984, the year I graduated high school. And Stan Lee talks about handling the topic of alcohol temptation of Tony Stark, the main character, alias Iron Man. We realized this was a difficult subject to handle and what care and delicacy had to be exercised in presenting it properly. And the main title of the struggle is the last installment, The Demon in the Bottle. I want to show you a little bit about the progression of Tony Stark's descent into all-out alcoholism. He's a playboy anyway, kind of a James Bond character, as the waitress is questioning him that he wants a fourth martini. You've already had 3, sir. You get the feeling throughout the installments here that his drinking problem is always there, and it seems to be growing. His nerves are very on the surface. He's kind of quick-tempered with Bethany, his loyal companion and accomplice, and you can see he's always pouring a drink, and Bethany is saying, I just would like to talk, I don't need drinks. And she's trying to help him with managing some of his life struggles. And in this frame here, he's reaching for a second bottle of champagne, and she shuts him down and says, "Don't you think you've had enough? I know you need to unwind, but couldn't we find some other way?" And there is the very attractive Bethany. Really nice artwork in the Bronze Age of comics. John Buscema is my favorite penciler, and his work is very similar to John Romita Jr. here, at least. I believe Buscema also penciled in Iron Man. Look at the descent of Tony Stark, very unkempt, shadows, rings around his eyes. The funniest part, most entertaining of this installment is when Tony Stark gets trained by Captain America. You can see there with Falcon and Wolverine, really nicely drawn in this frame. Check out Wolverine. Yeah, they think that Tony Stark needs more training to be a good Iron Man, so they walk him through his paces doing some martial arts stuff Captain America does. Really cool sequences of action here. Really, really nicely drawn, huh? Very funny, kind of campy scene here. They're in Monaco and they're on the beach, and there's this altercation that's been taking place here. And the Americans lie. We have heard of Tricky Dick, Richard Nixon. We will teach these cochons not to destroy our beaches. Our beaches, like where you swim at. Tony Stark unwinding with whiskey sours in this frame. You can see the writing on the wall, and some more great. It's always fun when you get a good comic book and there's other characters to enjoy rather than just the main character. I always like that. All right, moving to the Piece de la Resistance, the Demon in a Bottle. Tony Stark in an all-out Hamlet moment, holding the head of his Iron Man character before him as his world is falling apart around him, about the pressures of his life, the burdens of his peers. And you can see the bottles there. He's just really at a moment of reckoning. Iron Man, old buddy, I thought I knew you, but I don't know you at all. Tony Stark's in conflict. It's really a metaphor for what he's going through inside with his internal struggle. Is the superhero side of Iron Man, squaring that with the human side of Tony Stark. And he comes to the conclusion in this sequence that since Tony Stark is behind all my problems, I'll just stop being Tony Stark. You can see he's already half in the bag there. So he suits up as Iron Man and takes off. The only problem is he's drunk. And he comes across an accident scene involving what looks like rail cars. And instead of saving the day, he begins to lift up one of these box cars, rail cars, and being intoxicated, he drops it accidentally and nearly kills everybody on the ground. So his superhero powers are, and his reasoning, his motor skills are just off. So this is affecting him in this way as well, as he throws off his helmet. You can see him as he comes home to unwind. Bethany puts a hand on his arm and just basically does an intervention with him, and that he's got to, she confides in him how she lost her husband, this blonde guy in the bottom right, due to pill addiction, which resulted in a fatal automobile accident. And she's basically telling Tony Stark that you remind me of my late husband, in that you're bringing yourself down. And she says, for God's sake, let go of the troubles you can talk about. You've got to share your life. You're being a sacrificing loner, as sweat pours down his face as he's probably detoxing, and he reaches his hand out to Beth. Please help me. They embrace, and she does, through a page of, you can see the torment on his face as he's coming off the booze. And there's always this moment in the alcoholic cycle and in the art and literature of the torment, but she holds fast and keeps the booze away from him, and he gets through it, and he goes back to his drafting table. He's a designer, industrial designer, and he starts rekindling that interest. So you can see the sun rising there. It isn't in the end a beginning, so there's hope there. But just because he's gotten sober, his problems still need to be squared away. In the real world, he's got a business partner here who Tony Stark seems to have kind of neglected. And his business partner went out behind his back and sold off a couple shares of some stock that they owned. And his business partner also needed some kind of, I think it was some kind of medical bills or something. Yeah, my mother's medical bills, he says here, are rather steep. And so he goes to this like loan shark person with the stock, or to get more money. And Tony Stark finds out about this, and he's really upset that his business partner sold off that stock. So he finds this loan shark who took the money, this guy in a chair. And Tony Stark or Iron Man just trashes his office. There he is flying out of his chair, and he gets the stock money back. So he goes back home and he starts pouring himself a drink of Jack Daniels, but Bethany intercedes. Oh, Tony, don't. And so she's upset, and there's his business partner there in that frame with Bethany, and they turn away, and she says, I guess I've done all I could. It's up to you now, and to the man you are inside. Just remember, Tony, we love you. And he's standing there with the bottle in his hand, and then he really has this moment of reckoning. As the soft words fade, he's alone in silence. He fights the hardest battle of his life. His hands shake, his mouth seems lined with wool, and he knows merciful escape is but a shot glass away. But he thinks this through, and comes to the conclusion that his life's dream is to help others, either through superheroic exploits or through modern miracles of design, and always to the exclusion of his own personal pains and prejudices. But he wants to find his calling here. He's figuring that out. The drink or the dream. Each heads a path that he knows will take him through the rest of his life. He's got a choice, Tony Stark does, to live a life drinking or to live a life following his dream. So he sets his jaw and he makes a decision. He puts the bottle of Jack Daniels down, puts the cap back on here. Now Bethany and the business partner make a reemergence here. Very good, sir. They're in a nice Corvette or sports car tooling around. And Tony Stark says he feels like he's taken life's best shot and he's still standing. They're driving off, and he's going to fight to keep his company intact. And in the last frame, as the sunbeams flood the frame and the car is driving off, "I'm going to win," says Tony Stark. And in the lower corner here, let me focus in here, it says, "So long, JR," meaning John Romita Jr. I'm guessing that's what the penciler or the inker wrote in there as kind of an aside with each other in the bullpen. I'm guessing because the series was over and those artists were working together for this really well-drawn, well-inked, well-scripted series. It's pretty legendary, actually, and I was watching some other videos on YouTube, people reviewing this stuff, and some rank it as the top Iron Man comic. It certainly has a poignant message. If a young person you might know might benefit from relating to a story like that, maybe it could be helpful, because comics have a way of getting through to people, really of all ages. I mean, I'm in my 50s and I still love this stuff and appreciate the artwork and everything. And you guys who have been following my channel know that it's one of my hobbies is to collect this vintage stuff and appreciate especially the artwork. But yeah, it's a nice way to take on a theme like that. Iron Man is an awesome character, resurrected in the feature films recently, for some of you who know about that. I look forward to reading your comments below, and have a great day.